Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Full Moon Fridays here on the Outpost Unknown YouTube channel. My name is Matthew, joined once again by my friends Borp
Hello.
and Steve.
I'm here. I'm jealous of Borp's futon. I want that. I want that in my basement.
Oh. How do you feel about that, Borp?
I did not hear a word of that.
I don't think he had his headset on.
He wants your futon.
My futon? Okay. Sure.
Cool.
Alright.
Okay. Fellas, we have made it. We have made it to the OG, the original Puppet Master film released in 1989, directed by David Schmoller. This is a guy who had previously directed Klaus Kinski in Crawl Space, very sort of famous for the horror show that happened during that. And then he sort of created the Blade puppet in Mr. Kinski's visage because he hated him so much. And we're here. 1989, the first film from Full Moon after the Empire collapsed. Steve, how you feeling that we've made it to the original film here, finally?
I'm happy that we survived. I think we've definitely taken one from the team. No one should watch this series in chronological order. I will say that it's been, I guess I had it in my head that Charles Band was like directed like the majority of these, and it turns out he directed very, very few. Like he produced all of them, and I assume, probably created many of the characters and whatnot. But yeah, he was not as hands-on as I thought until the later movies, which are garbage.
Yeah, absolutely. Borp, now you had not really seen any of these movies before joining us on this journey. You got to the original. Like, what were your thoughts going into this? Were you like, okay, I'm going to sort of learn why Matt and Steve love this franchise so much, or how are you feeling going into it?
Well, from the way you guys have been talking, it seems like a lot of fans maybe more connect to the sequels like 2 and 3. So I was excited going into this. I thought I knew what I was going to get, and it was like weirder than I expected it to be. Even though you guys kind of prepped me for that, I was not prepared for what I got. And in some ways, this is definitely one of the better ones we've seen. It has like good weird moments and a lot of bad weird moments. And ultimately, I don't think it's like great, but this is at least interesting. We're gonna have stuff to talk about. It's not gonna be like, the Axis trilogy where we're all like running through the plot and be like, well, that was awful. There's nothing interesting here. There's
15-minute episodes.
Yeah. There's stuff here. I enjoyed my time with it. It was weird.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so like I said, we're here, 1989, Full Moon, or Charles Band had Empire Pictures. It collapsed into bankruptcy. 6 months after that went under, he did Full Moon, and he secured the sweetheart deal with Paramount Pictures to distribute all of his movies. So he needed a hit right out the gate. Puppet Master was the original thing that he was going to do. This was apparently going to be an Empire film before it sort of collapsed. He brought David Schmoller on as director because he had worked with him multiple times with Empire. Interesting thing about this was the original script for this was completely different. It had more puppets, more sex, more violence, more everything. David Schmoller, the director, hated it. He hated the script. He hated being asked to work on it. He hated the movie he made. He hated it when it was released. And apparently he still kind of hates it to this day. He thinks killer puppets are stupid. He thinks this is, I think the quote in this book came from the video aisle, which is fantastic. If you want to know everything about Full Moon, check out this book. He called it a piece of shit movie. So David Schmoller is not a fan of this at all. But it became a humongous hit. It sold, I think, by February when it was just 50,000 video store units. It was Paramount's biggest film from the direct-to-video that they'd ever had, and that sort of kickstarted everything Full Moon afterwards. So if this movie had failed miserably financially, it's possible we would not have had to suffer through all of the previous hours of movies that we've watched in this franchise. Who knows where Charles Band would be right now, but this one kind of like set it up, created what we've got here.
So the director hated, I mean, he hates the idea of killer puppets apparently, but he hated the way it turned out, or he hated he didn't get to make the original script, or what? Like,
No, the director changed it.
oh,
So
okay.
he had the original script, he hated it, so he rewrote everything. He basically went over and rewrote it and
He
still
toned
hated
it
it.
down.
Yes, he toned everything down. Six shooter was originally supposed to be in this. Cyclops was originally supposed to be in this. There's multiple other puppets that we see in later
Because now,
films
now I'm
that were
starting to
supposed to
think
be in.
that he might be history's greatest villain if he had this amazing killer puppet script and he turned it into Puppet Master 1, even though I have a fondness for Puppet Master 1.
I don't.
He didn't like it. He
Uh,
didn't like
Because
anything
it,
about
it
it.
sounds like
So
he was wanting to make something like on the level of the gore and nudity and whatnot of the remake that, or the reboot that we just watched, and then he made more of a safe movie instead.
well, the original script, I think, was it David Hall? I'd have to go back in the book and look, but one of the people with Full Moon, I think it's David Hall, the guy who actually does a stop motion or whatever. I think maybe he had the original script. Don't quote me on this, but he was super disappointed that a bunch of stuff got cut out of it, and I do find it kind of interesting that David Schmuller saw this original script that was super fun because this actually got an X rating when it was originally rated. The final cut got an X rating. You can apparently still see the X cut for there's a German cut of it that was released. It still has the X rating. They actually had to tone it down from what it is to get the R rating to be able to be released.
You know, that's
Um,
funny. Like I watched this on Tubi, and there were so many cutaways from what should have been violence. I was wondering, like, is this another movie that Tubi edited? Because we learned when we did the later episodes of Spartacus that Tubi edited some of those, or someone edited them. So I was wondering, like, am I watching an edited version, or was this always cut out? And it seems like I'm watching an edited version, but the edited version is also the released version.
Yeah, the MPAA basically gave him an X, and they chopped down stuff. I think there's a couple sequences where fingers are sort of chopped off, and it's green blood. They had to go back in and change the red blood to green, and there's a few other sort of things that where it cuts away. But apparently, there's a German X version of this that's out there somewhere. I don't know how much more gore is in it, but apparently it exists according to the book. And so, but I think it's really interesting that David Schmuller hated the super gory, sexy script, rewrote what he wanted, still hated that, created the thing, hated the finished product, and put it out there. I mean, he wasn't happy with anything apparently with this movie. So we'll discuss whether or not that's he should be sort of upset with what he did here. We can get there, but Steve, take us away. What the hell is the original Puppet Master movie all about?
So we first get a flashback to 1939, even though according to every other movie in the series, this is actually 1941. And Toulon is repairing or polishing Jester's head, which is not a euphemism. I don't know. He's giving some attention to Jester.
He's
Uh,
like painting him and whatnot.
and then two guys in black trench coats and black hats, which we learn are Nazis. Do we even know that they're Nazis in this movie, or is that a thing that was added in later films? I don't. They're Nazis. It doesn't matter. They are going
That's a good question.
to go get Toulon because they presumably want his puppets. Blade notices them, and Blade is just out in the open running around, and no one ever looks down, so no one ever sees Blade. And so Blade makes it back to the room.
He's
Toulon,
making lots of noise too.
yeah, the
yeah,
We
it's
puppets.
see right
weird.
away that the puppets make noise, and they don't talk, but they're like here, here.
Yeah,
But
So
it's like
that's very different.
it's like the opening of like Black Christmas or Halloween or something. It's breathing really heavily. It's like it's
Yeah,
weird. It's weird.
Blade breathes very heavily.
anyways, all the puppets make it back to Toulon. He puts them in a trunk and hides them in the wall, and then kills himself before the Nazis come in. And then in the actual extended timeline, 10 minutes later, in comes Danny, who opens the wall and takes the puppets away. But that doesn't happen. We
Now,
don't see that.
yeah, the thing about this movie is like they established Toulon's got a million puppets. He's
Yes.
got them all over his walls and everything. So I'm like, okay, it kind of makes sense now. I don't know why the Nazis just didn't take those.
Maybe they
He's
did.
got a
I don't.
million of them
I
on
don't
the wall.
remember. I don't remember if they were there in the one scene where we saw this same room in Axis of Evil or whatever. Regardless, Toulon kills himself to protect his puppets. Then we cut to the late '80s. I think maybe '89, and we meet our main cast of characters who are all psychics. Alex sees the future in his dreams. So he has a excuse me, he has a recurring dream where a man and a woman are dancing, and then the man threatens the woman and says, "Alex, you can't save her." Then he has another he has another dream within a dream where he's being attacked by leeches, which now that I think about it, does not get paid off at any point in this movie. Uh, but then he wakes up for good. So he is one of the main psychics. We also meet a woman named Dana, who is like a carnival fortune teller, and she's obviously just like
Forget her.
fucking with people. But she does have legitimate like psychic powers. I think so.
That's where
Uh,
we get our Barbara Crampton cameo,
yep.
by the way. The great Barbara Crampton is there in that
Yeah,
sequence.
she is having her fortune told, or she's having her boyfriend's fortune told, and is like, no, that's stupid. He's not smart enough to do any of that. And so Dana is giving this obviously like bogus fortune, but then she does have like some sort of, I don't know, vision, like a legit vision of what's going on with which we'll come to find out is the Bodega Bay Inn. So she does have legit psychic powers, even though she's just fucking with people. Then we meet Frank and Carissa, and Carissa, I don't know the name of this, but her psychic power is like if she sits in a chair, she can tell you anyone who's ever sat in that chair. What she usually makes her, how she usually uses her powers is she can lay in a bed and tell you everyone who's ever fucked in that bed. And
Yeah.
she is
I think Borb said this movie's very, very horny, and
Yep.
it is. It's a very horny movie.
Like
is the movie
the
horny
way
or is
uh,
just Frank horny?
the way my heart sank immediately when they started introducing these characters, and it's like, oh god, everyone's a psychic in this movie. This is something I had completely missed about the original Puppet Master. In all my years of being in the horror discourse, I've completely blocked this out. I must have learned this at some point, but uh, and I'm like, oh my god, the foundation of this series is fucking psychic bullshit. I hate this. Luckily, they do have some. I hate that there's so much emphasis on all this other bullshit that's not puppets. Okay, let's continue.
Jeez, you're fired
That's
up today,
legitimate.
Borb.
I mean, I can't. Nothing that he said there was incorrect.
It's true.
So Carissa just can tell the history of an item by touching it, and then I think her husband or boyfriend, I don't know, is Frank, and I don't think Frank has any psychic powers. I think he's just Carissa's partner.
It's kind of weird. Like he reads the readings of the machine
Yeah.
and stuff, and I don't know if because he's got that girl in there. He's like, tell me your sexiest fantasy or something, and he's sort of understanding what's happening, even though he's not. So I don't know if he's just
No, so I think he's
reading
like, I think
stuff.
he's faking it. I think he thinks he's
Oh, you
psychic.
think it's fake it?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think because Carissa has actual psychic powers, and when Frank is like, tell me your wildest, sexiest fantasy to this other girl that's hooked up the machines, he's like, oh yeah, I can see it. She's running naked down the beach, and Carissa's like rolling her eyes. So I don't think Frank is psychic. I think Frank is telling himself what he wants to hear, because he is very horny and is just using this
Okay.
girl to his
I
own
didn't get that.
ends.
I thought he could see something somehow, but
I don't know.
unclear.
There's discourse within the Puppet Master community, I guess. But no, I think Frank is faking it, and Carissa is the actual psychic in this group. So that's our four main characters: Alex, Frank, Carissa, and Dana. And they all like get visions that they need to go to the Bodega Bay Inn, and the Bodega Bay Inn is where Neil Gallagher, a friend of theirs, is. And so they go to the inn, and they, all right, let's meet Neil. Let's see what Neil's been up to. Somehow Neil has called to us psychically because reasons. And they get there and they meet two people. They meet Megan, who is Neil's wife, and they meet a housekeeper whose name I don't know. And then Megan and the housekeeper are like, "Oh, thanks for coming, but like Neil died, like he's dead." And so all the psychics are like, "What the fuck? Why is Neil gone?" And so they see his body, and yep, he's dead. At some point, we get the backstory
I
about
like when she puts that big pin down in him.
yeah. It
That's cool. I'm just
becomes
making sure he's dead.
it
That's cool.
becomes quickly apparent that none of these people actually ever liked Neil. Like they thought Neil was a jerk, and like Matt said, Dana like stabs Neil's corpse with like a long needle type thing, like stabs it in the heart to make sure that he's actually dead because they hate him so much. At some point, we find out the backstory. Neil was aware of Toulon and the magic of the puppets, and he was searching for them. And he employed these other psychics to try to help him to try to help like get him to Toulon's secrets. And ultimately, nothing came of it. They all went their separate ways. And so Alex is actually like a good dude, and he wanted to go back just to see what was going on with Neil. The other three, Dana, Frank, and Carissa, they give no fucks about Neil. Like they only showed up because they thought they were going to learn about Toulon stuff, and so they kind of separate from everyone else, hatch a plan to search through Neil's shit, at night when everyone's asleep. They give no fucks about Neil. They just want to learn about Toulon. Uh, that's kind of the setup for this. Ultimately, everyone goes back to their rooms and puppets start attacking. Anything about any of these characters you want to talk about? Like this movie's light on plot. So it's got psychics and puppets and magic, and yet I watch it and I still think this is very light on plot and substance.
Yeah, it's like borderline incomprehensible at times. Uh, it just kind of feels like a bunch of stuff happened. In some ways, it was interesting watching the Littlest Reich before this because it like mirrors the structure of Littlest Reich, kind of mirrors this movie in an interesting way, where you get to this point where uh, it's just a sequence where the puppets are running around doing stuff, and uh, not a lot happens plot wise. So I, it's like it's interesting because I feel like this movie uh, tries to go for like some sort of surrealism with its style and plot and everything, but then they also try to have this really fun killer puppet movie. It really does feel like it's like two movies clashing together. They got the cinematographer from who did like a bunch of Lucio Fulci films, and all those are super surreal. So it has like the look, but then I don't know. I kind of feel that production like struggle within this movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and I think part of that is David Schmuller hated making this, and he hated the whole process of putting this together. And I think that when you have someone completely rework an entire script with different sort of things, then that's going to come through. I think where this, with regards to characters, I actually think all of these characters are pretty. I mean, there's no depth to any of them. Don't get me wrong. There's no depth to them. But I think, when you have a group of all psychics, they all have kind of like their own individuality to them. They're all kind of unique in their own ways. They're not like completely similar to one another. Carissa's very different than Dana, for example. I like that they put like give them little weird traits. Like, is it Dana that's got like the stuffed dead dog that she carries
Yep.
around all over the place, and
She's got like
and
a
so
severed chicken foot that she dabs in blood and smears on people for
yeah,
protection.
so they all have their own unique aspect to them, which I do like. I think by and large the characters themselves, I have no problem with. I personally don't have a problem that they're all psychics. I think it's a kind of. I can't think of a horror film off the top of my head. I'm sure they exist, but that all of the characters are psychics. Like everybody in the entire cast, aside from maybe the wife of Andre or of Neil or whatever, but everybody's a psychic. And I think the fact that they're trying to show different, like, because you're right, there is a very surreal quality to it. Like they will have visions, and like the dancing, right? He has visions of the dancing, and it's like you can't save her, and all that kind of stuff. It's weird, it's unusual, and I kind of like the idea that it's just all psychics, and you don't really know what's actually going on throughout the course of the film. I enjoyed that aspect of it.
Anything else, or am I ready to continue?
Continue. Go.
All right.
Continue.
Uh, So then now puppets start attacking. So the first person to get attacked is actually like Pinhead crawls out of Neil's coffin because Neil's body is just there, like I guess for a viewing. And Pinhead jumps out of his coffin and goes to attack the housekeeper. And Dana had like run into the housekeeper. And again, even though Dana is giving bogus like carnival fortunes, she does have legitimate psychic powers. And so when she interacts with the housekeeper, she tells the housekeeper like stay away from fireplaces, bad things will happen to you near fireplaces. And so she's starting a fire and Pinhead comes and attacks her and like just like hits her with a fireplace poker. And then the housekeeper kind of like disappears for a while. We don't really see what happens to her. um, Carissa and Frank are off having sex, and Carissa has tied Frank to the bed, and she hears like the door open.
Awkward sequence.
Yeah, she hears the door open and she sees things running under the bed. And Frank is like, untie me, like untie me. And she doesn't. Instead, she just looks over the side of the bed and gets a tunneler to the face, which again we don't see. I wonder if that is a scene that is in the X-rated cut because we see the aftermath later on. We don't see the actual attack. And then Leech Woman crawls onto the bed, and Frank is like, "Oh, Carissa, you were fucking with me. Oh, how dare you!" Leech Woman, this tiny little puppet, apparently like weighs the same and like has the same type of touch that Carissa does. Because Frank can't tell that there is now a tiny puppet sitting on his chest. And Leech Woman starts like throwing leeches up on him, and he's blindfolded as well. So eventually he gets the blindfold in such a way that he can look out from under it. But his hands are tied, so he can't do anything, and he starts screaming because now the leeches are drinking his blood, and I assume in like 7 to 10 business days he will be completely drained and therefore dead. Um, and then
It's so weird. Like the Leech Woman puppet is so bizarre because all the other puppets have a plausible way in which their sort of a weapon can kill. Like obviously Pinhead's super strong, right? And he can crush heads and stuff with his giant hands, and Blade can slice people open, and Tunneler can drill into people. Leech Woman, like her sort of weapon, I guess, just barred from that won't kill anybody. Like it doesn't make any logical sense why Leech Woman would have that as a power.
I mean, I
That's what I
guess
was gonna
like
say.
sometimes she will like spit them into people's mouths. Maybe she chokes them. But yeah, like Leech Woman would be kind of useless in a fight, right? Like, anyway, yeah,
Yeah, because it takes forever for the leeches to come out.
yeah,
Also,
right. Like the other puppets have to like hold people down to let Leech Woman spend 20 minutes hawking up a leech,
Right.
and then she has to do that, you know, 37 more times to cause any damage. Like, what is? I want to ask Charles Band now. What is the purpose of Leech Woman? Like, what is she designed to do? Because yes, Pinhead's got super strength. Blade has a hook and a knife. Six Shooter has guns. What does Leech Woman do in a fight? Now we actually see Leech Woman fight in next movie, and it doesn't work out well for her. So,
no, it does
so
not.
Leech
Well,
Woman's
well,
kind of
it's
useless.
always like the puppets working together, and there's like a group kill, and then at the end, Leech Woman runs in. It's like I'm also here, and throws up a leech, and then
Yeah,
runs away.
Yeah,
yeah. She's got to have dudes tied up to really
Hmm.
do much of anything.
Yeah.
yeah.
And even then, it's pleasurable at first. Apparently, it's
Yeah,
very
Frank was
Right.
pleasurable.
into it.
So
Yeah.
he was
Uh,
into it. Yeah.
so, anyways, Carissa is dead. Frank is eventually going to be dead, and then we see. And Frank is yelling. He doesn't yell for help. He's just going, ah,
Yeah.
ah! And so Alex is like, oh, that Frank and Carissa, they're going at it again.
I
Uh,
think this is hilarious because they show it's Dana and Alex. They both can hear this wild sex session going on. And I'm like, you have this entire hotel. Why are you picking the rooms connected to the loud sex, maniacs? Why don't you just go pick a different room so you can sleep? I do think it's funny we mentioned Dana's death scene. Dana's death scene is very long and
we
extended.
haven't mentioned it yet.
So,
You're jumping ahead.
oh, I thought. Oh, sorry. I thought you mentioned Dana. Dana. Oh, you were talking about the housekeeper. Never mind.
Yeah,
My fault.
housekeeper. Yeah. But we'll get to now. So like Alex and Dana are like, well, first like Dana like starts hitting on Alex, and Alex is not interested because Dana's fucking nuts. And so Dana is like, well, all right, Leroy, let's take this bottle of wine, which is like our fifth at this point, into our room. And so she goes into her room, and now Neil's corpse is just sitting in a chair. And Dana is not phased by this. She's like, she's a psychic. Obviously, she believes in life after death of some sort and supernatural powers. And so she is not phased by this. She knows that Neil, somehow, despite being dead, is trying to pull some shit. And so she, like, I don't know, like starts lighting incense and starts trying to do some sort of ritual to cleanse things. Uh, but then she gets attacked. And Matt, why don't you tell us about Dana's death scene or the extended fight scene that she gets?
Yeah, I mean, she fights everybody essentially, right? She fights Pinhead, or not? Yeah, Pinhead is like trying to fuck with her. She gets away. She's running away. Blade comes, slicing her up and everything. She eventually makes it into a an elevator. It's like a 3 or 4 minute
Yeah.
extended sequence of her trying to get away from various puppets who are trying to
Pinhead
kill her.
shows up and like starts like punching her and knocks her down, snaps her ankle. She still finds the strength to like grab Pinhead and throw him away, and then she crawls out of the room and Pinhead comes back. And so she throws Pinhead like down a flight of stairs. So he like they're on like the third or fourth floor, and so he crashes to the bottom of the staircase. And then Blade comes out, and Blade like starts trying to run after and cut her, and she knocks Blade away, and she crawls into an elevator and goes down to the bottom floor. And then Pinhead opens the door to the elevator because he got knocked down there, and goes in and starts like punching her in the face, and she kicks Pinhead away
So violent.
again. And
So violent.
Yep.
and then Blade drops down from the hatch in the top of the elevator and slices her throat, and that's how she finally dies. But she puts up a hell of a fight.
I like this. I like this whole sequence because I think that it's cool that she's not freaked out when Neil sort of shows up in her bedroom. I think your typical response from any character in a horror movie would be like, "Ah, what the hell," and running away or whatever. But yeah, I like that this character, again, each character has their own unique sort of thing to them. I like that she puts up a fight and she doesn't die, and it gives us more puppet action, which is what we want. Like that shot with Blade, and this is all like stop motion. A lot of this is stop motion, which looks really, really cool in the hand puppets. But you see Blade at the far end of the hallway, and the lighting makes it look really cool. And it's like it's not one of those. Okay, the puppet shows up and boom, she's dead. It's no, we get a cool extended fight sequence between somebody and a puppet, and I really like that whole sequence.
They did something with Pinhead that I thought was like super funny because they're in a room and then in a hallway and then an elevator, and then there are scenes where it's just Pinhead on a fully black background, and it's obviously like someone's hand punching. So I feel like they may have had like a bigger
Yes,
Pinhead puppet so that they could like use the fist. I thought
they had
it
a
was
they
really
had
well
a
done.
little person. They had a little person put her hands in there, and it's actually her hands punching on that. So yeah,
It was really well done. Like it stood out. It's like
yeah, it looks
I
cool.
know how you did that effect, but it was still really cool. There's another scene earlier on. Is I Megan is a character in this movie, but she's not important like whatsoever. Like there's another scene where Neil's body is moved somewhere, and she sees it and freaks out, and so she and Alex kind of have the hots for each other. But anyway, so Frank and Carissa are dead. Uh, Dana is dead, and this is like maybe the hour mark. So it's like the first half hour backstory, the middle half hour puppets attack, and then the last half hour, the only people left are Megan and Alex, and so now they got to do some exposition. So Alex has another dream about Dana. Dana like not Dana, Megan. He has a dream about Megan, and Megan leads him up to the attic of this place, and has a dance with Neil, and he gets the "you can't save her" line again. And then he wakes up and Megan's knocking on his door, and things are going the exact same way as his dream. And he kind of like calls that out. It's like, yeah, I know exactly what you're gonna say. I just dreamed all this and whatnot. But she doesn't lead Alex to some sort of ballroom to dance with Neil. She leads him to Toulon's journal. She found it and she reads the journal. And I don't even know if we talked about it. Basically, like Neil's backstory, he wants Toulon's magic. He knows Toulon died in this hotel. He married Megan to get access to the hotel because Megan owns it. Um, but she,
They're all very shocked that he got married too. They're
yes,
like, why would he get married to you? Like they're suspicious of her. All the psychics are, and they're also there's a line where they're like, how did we not know he was dead? Like we're all psychic. How was he able to hide the fact that he died from us before we got here?
yeah. So there's some weirdness that even within the movie, like the psychics, the people with like some sort of extra sensory perception, like they don't understand it either. But anyways, I just want to put out like Neil is a scumbag and he married Megan to get access to the Bodega Bay Inn, which she owned. So anyways, but she goes digging. Like, all right, something mysterious is going on with my now dead husband. Let me go rummage through his shit, and she finds Toulon's journal, and the journal talks about the puppets, and Toulon is like, yeah, magic, they're alive and I love them like my children, but they are puppets, they need a master. I wonder, I worry what would happen if someone dangerous gets in charge of them, which is why he killed himself in the beginning, to keep, I guess, the Nazis from taking them. um, and then Alex is like, all right, we gotta get the fuck out of here. Like, things are wrong. We gotta go. And so they go downstairs, and Neil is there, and Neil is just alive now. And Neil like discovered Toulon's secret and killed himself, but then brought himself back with Toulon's magic. Um, and so he's got the other people that are dead. So Frank, Carissa, and Dana, and he's got them like posed at a dinner table, like they're in the middle of dinner, but they're super dead. There's also a scene earlier where Alex has a dream, and he pulls the covers off his bed, and their severed heads are sitting at the foot of his bed, but they're all alive and smiling, and like Frank's
Yeah.
talked to him. It's like that's a scene that like serves no purpose, but is like really fucking cool. But anyway, so now we get like Neil's going to explain the master plan, and he's like, yeah, I did all of this to get Toulon's secret. I killed myself, and I killed myself and then summoned you all here so that I could kill all of you, because I knew that you would also want the secret. I think that was his plan. And then he says, also, I'm tired of experimenting on the puppets. And so I think he's implying he wants to start experimenting on his uh, friends. But he knocks Jester away. He's like, I'm done playing with these toys, which causes
God.
which causes the puppets to rebel. Neil attacks both Alex and Megan. They fight back. Neil gets knocked
See,
into an elevator.
Steve, that's the thing. Jester is the one that brings all the puppets together, right? You fuck with Jester, and they're like, it's on now. It's on. You don't hit Jester because, and interestingly enough, I read that Jester was originally supposed to be the leader of the puppets. That was the whole concept behind Jester, and then it became Blade, obviously, as all
Because
the
they're like, wait
stuff
a minute,
goes on.
Jester is only second to Leech Woman in uselessness. He can't be the leader.
Look, look. I don't
Everything I
want to
said is
hear any
correct.
more bad mouthing of Jester. He's amazing. He's awesome. But yeah,
Yeah.
don't
So
fuck with Jester.
so because Jester's not even involved in this final kill scene, because Neil gets knocked in this elevator and the door is shut and he can't get out now, and so all of the puppets except Jester get into the elevator with him and start trying to kill him.
Look,
So like he tries to escape through the hatch in the top, and Blade cuts his fingers off. Uh, Pinhead's punching the shit out of him. Tunneler drills into his neck. Leech Woman pukes a leech into his mouth now that he's being held down by all the other puppets. And then ultimately, Pinhead snaps his neck. And Neil does have green blood in this scene, which I guess we are to assume now, with the power of hindsight, that is the reanimator agent puppet juice. So Neil is
yeah, probably.
dead, and then Alex just leaves. No mention of what Megan's going to do with these four corpses that she's got in her hotel now. Alex is just like, well, hey, I'm leaving. If you're ever out on the East Coast, look me up. And then Megan is now carrying around Dana's taxidermy dog, and the dog comes back to life. So I guess now Megan has powers. The end. It's a very weird ending.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah. Warp your thoughts.
Um, I think this is okay. I think this is okay. I feel like there, as I mentioned before, I feel like there is a push and pull here. There are two movies happening at once, and I think just the way my tastes go, I think I would have preferred the weird, surreal, psychic movie if it was just focused on that. Um, it kind of feels like for a franchise called Puppet Master, in this first one, the puppets are kind of an afterthought. Um,
They only have 5 minutes of screen time apparently in the movie.
yeah, and that's kind of, I don't know. I guess that's the part that I feel weird because I like all the puppet stuff in this movie. I think like most of the death scenes, except for the one with where it's only Leech Woman, that's one's kind of hokey. Um, I like all these sequences because they're like extended sequences of these puppets working together to kill these people. But yeah, I ultimately, like, I am not sure I think this like comes together in a good way, and most of that is probably due to the problems behind the production. But it's still like it's fascinating. I guess.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. Steve, your thoughts on the OG Puppet Master?
I like it, but it's definitely nostalgia. Like this movie is nothing special. Like I think back on like is it like the original Friday the 13th that used to have this reputation for being like incredibly violent and or not Jason, but the killer is there for so much of the movie, and then someone like added it all up, and like there's actually maybe like 4 minutes of action in it throughout the whole movie.
This make only Texas Chainsaw Massacre is where people really remember that because there's barely any blood in TCM at all.
All right. Well, I liken it back to those first movies and these some like famous, I guess, slasher-ish franchises where the people think they're bloodier and gorier and more action-packed than they actually are. And that was my feeling watching Puppet Master 1. Like I like it. I think it's a fine movie, but there's not a lot of meat to it. Like it wouldn't this isn't something that would really hold up to any sort of like aggressive scrutiny. Like it's fine. I'm glad that it led into Puppet Master 2, which I remember being a far superior movie. There's nothing special about Puppet Master 1 other than it is the first and it's our introduction to these characters, to these puppets anyway.
I like this one quite a bit, probably a little bit more than you guys do. I think that again, I do think it's an interesting, unique angle. Obviously, killer puppets or dolls and things is not a new concept. Charles Band was doing that with Empire. I mean, one of your favorite films, Steve, is
Dolls
Dolls,
Dolls is
right?
superior to Puppet Master 1 in every way in my
Yeah.
opinion.
But I do like I like the setting here. I like the uniqueness of the puppets. I like the psychic sort of angle to it. Do think there is kind of no, I wouldn't go so far as to call it a surreal tone to it, but there is enough weirdness going on here that I'm just like, this is just it kind of stands out in its own unique way a little bit compared to other sort of killer puppet movies. Like you can look at something like Child's Play, for example, which is a far superior movie. It's a killer doll movie, but it doesn't feel the same as this. This feels distinctly Charles Band ish. Like this is what he would then you know do the rest of his career essentially doing this kind of stuff. So I really like that. I think this movie in particular hits the most in that spot when you are like, God, how old was I? I would have been 8 years old when I saw this when my mom rented it. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. When you're seeing this, you're not really concerned about is there depth and meaning and what is, all of that. You just want to see something that's kind of, it's got a wonder to it, right? You're like, ooh, all these puppets, a stop motion tunneler running towards the camera, drilling into somebody's head, even though I don't see it in my mind, I'm seeing it, right? And oh, Blade running around, it gets that sense of wonder. I think it's a good gateway horror film for people who are not ready to watch a Serbian film, but just want to sort of watch. Hey, what is this cool little thing? It's got those sort of the taboos of it's got who's the girl? Who's the psychic sex girl?
Carissa.
It's like she shows her boobs. There's a whole bathtub scene with her in it and stuff. And you're kind of like in that age where you're looking at stuff. Where you're like, I'm not supposed to be seeing this kind of stuff, but it's not so graphic that it would sort of like scar you. It was just kind of like, oh, this is a dangerous film if you're like 11 years old, right? And because of that, it creates all those memories and nostalgia, and you imbue all that onto the film itself as you get older. And so this is one of those movies where I'm like, you know what, I can recognize this is kind of fluff. There's nothing, you're right, Steve, there's nothing to this. It's just a means to get some puppets on screen for a brief amount of time to kill some people, but I love it. I think it's one of those things where I just have a sense of like wonder to it. I'm like, this is, I don't need every film to tell me something and have a deeper meaning. Sometimes I just want a fun time, and I think the original Puppet Master is a real fun time, and it's a good springboard for some of the later ones. We've already watched part 3. We all agree part 3 is good. The next one coming up is part 2, which is my personal favorite. That's the one that I always loved and I thought was better, even though I think it might actually have less puppet stuff in it than this one, strangely enough. When I revisit it, we'll see if you guys think the same way, if it's as good as I like it. But yeah, I like this one. I think this is good. I think people should go check it out for sure. If you're listening to this and like, what is this all about? I'd recommend Puppet Master, the original.
It's fine. It's cool.
Yeah.
Excited to watch Puppet Master 2. I remember Puppet Master 2 being way better, though now that Matt's telling me there's even less puppet stuff in it, I'm a little worried.
I feel like Puppet Master 2, I've seen it a number of times, not sort of recent back to back with Puppet Master 1 and Puppet Master 2, but my recollection of Puppet Master 2 is that I feel like there's like a lot more talking, a lot more story type stuff going on. Less puppets, but the puppets that we do get is better than in part 1. That's my recollection of it. So I think that if you're looking for more lore, possibly, it has this whole Invisible Man vibe to it with Toulon, who actually shows up as a character for the first time in the franchise, and he's got the bandages all wrapped around. That kind of stuff, like
this movie.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about that. That's true. I'm talking about like evil Toulon.
Okay.
He's not a bad guy in this movie. He's just a nice hobo. William Hickey, who apparently got paid $15,000 for one day's work. So good job on you, William Hickey. But we started to see Toulon kind of as an evil bad guy, and that's how I remembered Toulon when I was a kid. Sort of growing. He's a bad guy, and I like that. But we'll see what you guys think. So
I remember part 2 having like a level of absurdity that is not in the other movies, like good absurdity, like talking about pig brain and cow brain, and I remember liking part 2 a lot. I'm gonna be like, I don't know, in a bad mental place if part 2 ends up being bad.
Part 2 has a mean streak to it. Like, you will see Torch burn a child alive. But yeah, the very end also has a very goofy. Like, it is a weird ending. You think the ending of this is kind of odd and unusual. The very end of part 2 is a story thread they never follow up on in the rest of the Puppet Master things. They never even address it.
So that's never happened before.
Yeah. So, thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back in a couple weeks with Puppet Master 2, and we will. How many more Puppet Master movies do we have after Puppet Master 2?
It's got to be
nearing the end, right?
Yeah. So what we have left is 2, 4, 5, the Dr. Death solo movie. Is that?
And then Demonic Toys. Puppet Master vs. Okay.
Yeah.
What is Curse of the Puppet Master? I don't think I've seen
God, I forgot that. We've got Curse and the Clip Show. So no, we are not. We still have like 7 movies.
All right, we got a lot more to go.
We blocked those out of our memories.
Okay. All right. So we'll be back in a couple weeks with the original, or Puppet Master 2, the sequel to the original film. See you then.